what a happy surprise. You're 2 hours early.
I took an earlier plane. Wasn't that clever of me?
Oh, how nice.
If you love listening to this show, please consider giving a rating and a review on Amazon Alexa or wherever you listen. We want to continue bringing you this amazing content, and part of our ability to do that means that we need a big audience. Now, it may not seem like much, but rating and reviewing the show will help more people find us, just like how you found this show. Simply on any podcast platform, search for a show, scroll down to the bottom, and push 5 stars. It's that easy. Thanks for supporting the show. So I'm joined by Rob LoCascio, who is the founder and CEO of LivePerson, which is a publicly traded company that helps brands to connect with their customers through trusted conversational AI. And they were also featured on Fast Company's World's Most Innovative Companies list in 2020. So welcome, Rob.
Hey, Scott. How you doing?
All right, good. So you're one of the longest standing CEOs from the dot-com era. I think your company was founded back in 1995. That's when the dot-com was beginning to take off. And what an incredible ride that must have been. And, you know, some people, of course, made their money and quickly exited while others perished. How did your organization and you manage to survive the dot-com bust, make it through the Great Recession, and then thrive in the COVID world?
You know, it's as an entrepreneur, you know, this is my second company. So my first company, I started out of college in 1990. I was interactive kiosks, like touchscreen kiosks for college campuses. And I put 50 grand on my credit cards, and there's no venture capital back then, and funded it. And then ultimately it went under, and I started LivePerson in 95. And I started by sleeping on a couch for 2 years and showered at a health club because I had the couch in my office. I couldn't afford an apartment. So I went for affording an office. So I guess in many ways, I've always looked at the challenge of building a business and the ups and downs as part of like this journey to build a company. Daddy's doing an interview.
We love kids on the show.
All right, this is the one. Next LoCascio entrepreneur.
All right, I love it.
Okay. So you know, I grew up in an entrepreneurial family, and I've always heard the stories of never quitting. And so what I found, though, during the really, really difficult times, like the dot-com was very, very hard, just like this time, they're very similar, is, you know, you can't have any real expectations of tomorrow. And you also have to lead with empathy. You have to lead in a different way. And the most important thing, I think, is just don't quit. You know, the most important thing that I found in my life was just don't quit. And so Daddy's doing an interview. Okay.
Oh, we love co-guests, so it's not a problem. Honestly,
you love co-guests? This
is terrific. I can tell you this episode is going to go very far.
You think?
You're a New York native.
So I wouldn't quit. And being in New York during the dot-com implosion, then 9/11, it was a very difficult time. We fired 80% of our employees at the time because, you know, the internet was imploding. Then we watched the towers come down and then dealt with people's lives. And during that time, and even now, it's the same thing. I said, you know, we've got to lead by, you know, being very open-minded about our future, don't have expectations, and lead with empathy. This is really what gets us through these difficult times.
Well, I think clearly you're what a amazing role model in terms of not quitting and having that consistency. Now, what I was going to ask is that you've been a New York native, and you've really chosen to give back to the community through various organizations such as the Dream Big Foundation. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, you know, I going back to my couch moment, when I was sleeping on the couch, and it was a really difficult time in my life. I was broke, and I had lost my first company, and but I learned something there, and I was working with a coach at the time, and he said, you should go and volunteer. And I'm like, I don't have any money. I'm like, he's like, it doesn't matter. Just, you'll see. So I went and slept in a homeless shelter at St. Bart's Church on Park Avenue. And I remember I'd sleep there at night, like once a month, feed the people, not families, they were individuals. And, you start to realize there are people that are way worse off than you are, that you shouldn't feel sorry for yourself even if you're sleeping on a couch. There are people who don't have a couch. And I learned a lot there. And so I always felt that part of what I think is your duty, especially as you get more successful and maybe get some money, it's not the money. It's your ability to organize people and do something big in the world. So after 9/11, that Thanksgiving, I was like, I just want to do something more. And so we went out, we fed 70 families in a homeless shelter, mostly women. It's called Women in Need. It's a homeless shelter. And they're helping women who escaped horrible situations with their boyfriends or husbands. They've got kids. And we knocked doors and handed turkeys to them. And I just had a wonderful experience doing it. I learned a lot about the impact I could have on people's lives on delivering a turkey. And they felt like somebody cared about them. And then I turned it into an organization, and then we turned it into something that happens every year. We fed over 80,000 families now since that time. So I'm very proud of that. And there's a lot more than our company's done, but that's our big program in New York City.
So I'm going to take that message of care and empathy and transition to your company, LivePerson. And what is that company, and how do you guys help brands connect with customers in exactly the kind of same tenets that you're talking about in terms of care, empathy, and trust?
Yeah, it's like I've always looked at technology. It's really interesting. As an entrepreneur, like there's a bolt of lightning that hits you, and that bolt of lightning gives you the information you need to move forward and build a company. And usually that bolt of lightning comes from an experience that you've had. And I had an experience online of trying to buy a Dell server in 1997. And I went on and configured it on the website. It was pretty bad, but I configured it. And I couldn't get something done. I had to pick up the phone, and I called one of the salespeople at Dell, and they had nothing to do with the web. I said I spent an hour configuring the service, and whatever, the web has nothing to do with us. So I realized, like, if you can bring technology and humanity together, that could power, that's what powers commerce. I mean, I never looked at commerce as an automat, as something like an automated machine you put money into and the product falls out the bottom. I looked at it as something that has this emotional connection to it. So I've always been after, how do we take empathy, love, tenderness, and combine it with algorithms? And and a lot of that had to do with humans, and recently it has to do with automations, but what it really has to do is conversations. If a human has a conversation, there's something that goes on in the brain. You're listening to me. You're asking me questions. You're personalizing this experience for me. And that's what really, I believe, makes technology very powerful, if you can get those things going. So I bet down on chat. I invented web chat. And then 6 years ago, I came up with the concept to do messaging, bots, and AI. And we launched a whole new platform. Actually, 4 years ago, we thought about it. It took us about 2 years to build it. And we launched it, and we've been off to the races on conversational commerce and the ability to AI to power commerce.
Yeah, I think bots and conversational AI has been hot for the last, like I said, 5 plus 8 years or so. I think what makes you guys different is this underlying, again, belief system that, trust, care, empathy, love, all of these things that are difficult and very humanistic can in fact actually scale in mass. So it's this hyper mass personalization through automation. And what's interesting, again, this goes back to the comment that you made about how our brain work when we get into a conversation. The thing is, the customers generally know that they're speaking or conversing with a AI bot, but yet they still enjoy that conversation, that experience, and then effectively reflects better on the brand customer service, right?
Yes. And so I believe the biggest holdback for e-commerce or digital commerce, because up until COVID, e-commerce was about 17% of commerce. Amazon being 50% of that in the US. The holdback, and now it's about 26% of commerce is e-commerce because stores got shut down, and there obviously more people have to shop online. But still, if you were back in 1995 and you were at the beginning of the internet and e-commerce, we thought as people at the beginning, like by now 80% of commerce would be digital. We thought that's the way it would be. It never happened. And I believe a big part of that is because as humans, we don't operate in that world of automation. Like I'm saying, see a picture and buy it from a catalog. Now it's a digital catalog. We operate in a mode of storytelling. We operate in a mode of conversing. So stores had a place, a major place, because we could go in and feel comfortable about buying something because we could ask questions and have a conversation. That's how we build trust. So if we can scale those conversations and automate them, people don't care. It's a question, their brains are still going through the process of question, answer, and they feel they get satisfied and they build a hyper degree of trust, which then allows them to buy digitally. And I think this is what's ultimately is going to change the game. And it has to, because retail's been shut down. I don't know when retail will be back, but we're seeing now retailers wanting to do conversational commerce. They want to create the store experience where you talk to somebody, but they want to do it at scale by bringing machines in to do the conversations.
Yeah, I think you're spot on about the experience. And going back to your Dell example of that really bad experience, many times I think, outside of conversational AI, we as consumers shop online and we're mostly faced with bots that point us to FAQs. I think the difference is the timeliness, responsiveness, and the fact that there is more of a conversational back and forth that seems tailored versus keep on pointing back us to, static pages that we should read on our own. Now, you were talking about COVID and how things have transitioned and also accelerated some of the business for you guys. Can you go into a little bit more detail?
Yeah, so what happened was when social distancing came in and the government started to shut down, workplaces, the contact centers got shut down globally. So that's 15 million people. There are about 56 billion phone calls that happen to these 15 million people, and they're in centers like factories, sitting 2 feet from each other, answering a phone call. So what happened was they were sent home. And when they were sent home, a lot of those people could not handle a voice call coming into their homes. A lot of them don't have connectivity for back-end systems. So if you're calling your banking customer, they're accessing a back-end system. They don't have connectivity. If they're in the Philippines or in India, there are places they didn't have it. So at first it was like the capacity went down in half. Now I think we're about 60 or 70% of capacity is back, but 30% never came back. And there was a mad rush to start building automated conversations. So we went up 40% in volume between March and April. So we went from like 50 million conversations a month to 80 million conversations a month in a matter of a month. And that would normally happen over 24 months. That would happen over 2 years. So we had this massive spike. All these bots were being built. So the spikes kept going, and they're continuing because everyone's making a mad dash to fill in the capacity that never came back with the call center reps who can't handle voice calls. So it's been pretty amazing. And then in Q2, we grew 29% year over year, up from 17% in Q1. So we were supposed to do 82 million, and we did 92 million in sales. So like the knock-on effect in conversational AI, you can see it in our business because we're all in on it. It's really, really, there's a massive demand out there right now for what we're doing.
And what's interesting about this phenomenon, and it's an incredible jump from March, April, and also looking at Q2, is that this is not just a temporary blip in behavior, but this could become semi-permanent moving forward, even post-COVID-19, right?
Yeah, it's not. We can tell because consumers are not going back to voice calls. They're continuing in the mode. And the other thing is that they're getting conditioned. Like we're going to be doing this until next March. Like we're not getting a vaccine, so we're conditioning people to work differently, to operate their lives differently. I mean, even how we're running the company. We're giving up our offices. We're not going to have office space anymore because we are conditioned to work differently. It's the same with people buying. They're conditioned now to buy differently. Some people who never used e-commerce, now they're shopping. all
Yeah.
the time online. They're having conversation with bots. They're doing things that they never normally would have done, and now they're doing it because they have no choice. And then they're realizing this is pretty good and it's convenient. And that's really what they're seeing.
That's amazing. Sounds like the growth is just beginning. Now, we've
Yeah.
been talking about e-commerce primarily in retail, but can you talk about other categories like food, maybe, for example, and delivery, and how you guys are
Yeah,
playing?
so we spoke about on a quarterly call about Chipotle and how now there's a bot called Pepper, and you can on any messaging front end, so it could be Facebook or WhatsApp, Apple Business Chat, you message, no download, anything. You talk to Pepper, you message Pepper, and you build a burrito, and then you go to the door and they hand it to you. So honestly, the CEO of Chipotle, he's an amazing guy. And, it's either, look, people are not going to come in and build a burrito. They don't want to stand 2 feet from each other. There's got to be a better way to do this. There is. It's by having you talk to this bot called Pepper, and you can configure this burrito, you come back, do something else that asks you questions about what's your taste. So, this is something that's working quite well right now. Very powerful.
Now, just going just a little bit underneath the hood a little bit is that at the end of the day, you guys have created the infrastructure and the chassis for conversational AI, but really the brands create their own specialized niche bots specific to those interactions and functions. Is that correct?
Yeah. So we built the tool set in the platform. It's called the Conversational Cloud, but that's everyone should have their own brand. So we have a hotel in Vegas where they have a bot that's very Vegas hotel bot, and it's at the Cosmopolitan Hotel. It's called Rose, and that's really on brand about being in Vegas. And Rose cuts you the line at the marquee, and Rose tells you there's a special drink you can get at the bar that's only Rose knows about. And they built that to be on brand. Pepper's on brand for Chipotle. It's really important that you bring the creativity that you would about your own brand to the conversation. And then we have the tool set to look at what are the intents, so you can look at what are consumers asking for, then how do you build and automate those? And we built that. That's our special sauce, is that we enable like contact center reps and normal people to build an automation and deploy it. They don't have to be a scientist or an engineer. They can create conversations like they would write a sentence in a book, like write a page in a book, a paragraph, so they really are empowered to scale and deploy and own those conversations. And then we have a way to implement those and tie them into back-end systems. So that's kind of the tool set that enables you to scale at the rate that we're talking about working with these enterprises.
So looking a little bit further out, I mean, when we think about some of these use cases as more customer service, kind of reactive use cases, but when we think more holistic around user experience, and again, going back to the beginning of our conversation around trust, empathy, love, and scale mass personalization, how do you foresee that conversational AI will always be kind of there, resident and native in whatever messaging or even social media platforms? Because more and more consumers, especially the millennials and Gen Zs, are not looking for only when they need it or certainly broadcast approach, but they want a bilateral real-time engagement or conversation.
That's correct. So I ultimately think where this is going to go, and this is something we are working on, is that you will have your own AI. And we're working on to build something like this, that I think ultimately that you'll have this thing like Her. If you saw the movie Her, it's kind of like that, which is you'll have this AI that's yours, that you trust, that processes intents for you, that is not owned by a tech company. Even though a tech company may create it, like we want to create this, but ultimately it's yours and you feel like you trust it. It's not trying to get your data and steal your data and target you with anything. It's just a way for you to get a personalized way to process the intents in your life. I want to travel. I want to take a vacation. I want to book a hotel, whatever that is. I want to talk to I want my bank to, I want to pay my bank statement, my credit card statement. That should all be done with your own bot, and then it's interfacing with the bots of the brands. And that's the only way this is really going to work to humanize, to give the empathy, the love, and the tenderness to the consumer. You got to disconnect it from the brand.
Such a hugely powerful paradigm that you're talking about, and I think we kind of glossed over very quickly, but it's actually really pivotal because as soon as you said that, you're putting yourself in the same space as Google and Microsoft and Amazon, and everyone else that's moving towards that neural net that's hyper personalized for the individuals. But to your point, they're really interested in capturing that data for themselves. It's a proprietary ecosystem that they want to build out. For you guys, because you're starting with empathy, trust, and love, you're first and foremost consumer first, which is fundamentally different from kind of the bigger tech company perspective. So very interesting to see where this is going to go. Again, you started the .com momentum, and you continue to see the evolution of it and paving the future as well. My last question for you is lessons learned in terms of project or product that has failed in the past, and the lessons learned that you can share with others.
It's an interesting thing. I mean, if you've been around this company, I've been running for 25 years, you can imagine the amount of failures that you've had. I guess I have if I look at on the product side, it's a very tricky game because like when we went and we decided not to do chat anymore and we're going to bet in all on messaging, a lot of our customers told us they didn't care because they weren't ready for it, but it was the right thing for the future. So I just think as an entrepreneur, you have a vision, and that's what you have to follow. And I just truly believe that you've been given that as a gift. And it's like a song, I often wonder, like, where do songs come from? Like, how does a musician compose a song? Think of this act. It's if you talk to musicians, and I have a few friends who are in this field, it's almost, a tune comes in someone's head and it arrives. And then you take it and you make it into that thing that becomes maybe something, hundreds of millions of people listen to and love. It's the same thing with product. You're been given a vision and you have to follow that vision. And the vision is always a windy road. I always tell everyone the first iteration is wrong, but the first iteration of your product gets you in the game. So don't worry about it. If you try to build a perfect product out of the gate, all of the anxiety around perfection will stop you from building it. Get in the game, put a product out. The original product of the company was a community product, and it had one little piece of it with chat. This is back in 97, and the rest of it was bulletin boards and ways in which consumers could help each other through tech support. But that little chat feature was literally like a day's worth of work, and the rest was 6 months worth of work. That 1 day's worth of work is what ended up being the company. And we put the product down, then a customer said, I like that. I like the chat thing. I like that. I don't like everything else. Throw that away. But I love the chat thing. And that got us started, and then eventually you go forward. So I would just say, follow your gut, your vision, but get in the game and figure out, and then you'll be told what's wrong with it. And what I love is never fear the first day. I always found every day we were going to launch, every time we launched, like, I haven't had a big launch in many years, but I had one recently with the messaging platform. We made this big bet, and we launched it with T-Mobile, and this was 4 years ago. And I remember the day of launch, and we built this platform, it took like 2.5, 3 years to build. We're going to launch it now with T-Mobile, and we're all on the phone with T-Mobile, and something came up. They said, well, we can't launch today because something was in the way. And I remember going, and I said, okay, we'll take care of that. Literally, it was something, I said, we'll take care of it as a company. We'll man the phones. We'll take care of it. Fine. They pushed the button, and it launched. And then, like, within 5 minutes, the first consumer messaged in on the platform, and they loved it. And I remember, and that feeling, that feeling, there's nothing more, it's like having a baby. Like, your baby's born, you're like, man, I did it. So don't ever avoid that day. You got to have that day happen. And the rest of it, it's a windy road to, success. So.
Well, incredible advice from a rock star who's lived through it all, and it carries a tremendous amount of weight. So today I've been joined by Rob LoCascio, who is the CEO of LivePerson. Thanks for joining today, Rob.
Thanks, Scott. Have a good one.
If you've enjoyed this episode, take a moment to rate our show on any podcast platform that you listen to. Scroll down to the bottom and push 5 stars. It's that easy. And as always, thanks for listening.